Hey, what's up, everybody? We're back. And I want to say, first of all, thank you all so very much for your support and all the new subscribers joining in the discussion in the comment sections of these videos. I really appreciate it, and joining in on the fun, of course. And this is Nintendo, so it's always going to be interesting, something cool to talk about, something fun to talk about, the drama, all that good stuff, right? So anyways, for this video, there's a few interesting things going on with a few different developers in regards to the Nintendo Switch. And we'll get into that in a moment. But first of all, I do want to say that there is some really cool games on the Switch that I'm looking forward to. That, of course, would be The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Xenoblade Chronicles Part 2, Super Mario Odyssey, and Octopath Traveler, which looks awesome. Really, really awesome looking game from Square Enix. I'm really looking forward to those games. So far, those are my top 4 games on the Switch. Of course, Splatoon 2 looks cool, Fire Emblem Warriors sounds cool, and of course, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. We know that's already a good game anyway. And as far as the rest of the games are concerned, we have a ton of indie support on the Switch. We have all kinds of different games coming from indie developers. And of course, even yesterday, we had some more games announced for the Switch. 3 more, in fact, The World of Goo, Little Inferno, and Human Resource Machine coming to the Switch on launch day. So that adds a total to about 10 games so far that we know about that'll be available on the Switch at launch. Of course, those will be eShop games and not retail releases. So the Switch has a lot of indie support. It has some key exclusives coming in 2017, so we do have some games to look forward to. However, there's a few things of interest that you guys should pay attention to, in my opinion at least, that there are some key games that are still missing from the Switch that could theoretically be coming. And the explanation, I don't think, is one-sided. I think there's multiple reasons why this is happening, but we'll get into it here and let's discuss it. First of all, the producer of Resident Evil 7 has come out and said that the Switch is a very unique piece of hardware. He's looking forward to the possibilities of the system itself, but we have no plans at the moment regarding Resident Evil on the Switch. So that includes Resident Evil 7, of course. So that game and the series is not currently planned for the Switch, is what he's saying. Now, next, we have Gearbox, right? The guys who do Borderlands and Battleborn, those games. Of course, Randy Pitchford, the CEO, he's come out and said that they currently have no plans with Nintendo for the Switch. And now he recently clarified what he was talking about with Glixel in an interview, and he said some interesting things here as well. And basically, I'll paraphrase some of it. He of course says, "I love Nintendo and I think the Switch is awesome. I can't wait. And I've been a Nintendo fan my entire life." On and on and on since the NES. All the same old things that we hear from these guys all the time. So at least he has some nice things to say about Nintendo here. And in regards to the Borderlands series coming to the Switch, he says, "I think there might be some scenarios where if the Switch becomes a place where there's a huge number of customers and it doesn't compromise the experience that we're making, there could be a scenario where us at Take-Two and 2K decide to take the effort to make it happen. But we can't really think about that right now. And Nintendo, I think wisely, can't prioritize forcing that to happen." And I think he means money, right? Forcing that to happen. "I think they're better off," he says. "What it would take from them to guarantee that we exist on the Switch would be better spent by them doing the things they're best at." Then he goes on to say, "But it's still not enough of an engagement," talking about Nintendo, "to force things to happen that wouldn't happen just naturally, if that makes sense." Now, of course, we all know what happened to the Aliens game that was canceled on the Wii U, and all those big promises by this guy. So, of course, Randy Pitchford has a lot of haters, especially for what happened there, promising a game and then, of course, having it not come out on the Wii U due to sales or whatever happened to the game. But there is no doubt that Borderlands is a very huge series, and it sold in the tens of millions of copies on other platforms. And we'll come back to this in a moment, but the next studio has something interesting to say that we'll talk about, and that was independent developer from San Diego called Psyonix Studios. Of course, they're very famous from Rocket League, which is one of the biggest indie games of all time. It sold millions and millions of copies. It's extremely popular. And if you recall, just a few months ago, they said that they are really interested and want to bring Rocket League to the Switch. So you would think that the game would be coming to the Switch, right? Like, that's a foregone conclusion, you would think. They said, and I quote, "We are as excited as you are regarding the release of the Nintendo Switch. However, we don't have enough information at this time if that will happen. For the meantime, let's keep our fingers crossed that it will." For all the latest information on upcoming releases, updates, and other news, please visit the Rocket League Facebook page or follow us on Twitter. So that is really interesting. They don't have enough information? I don't understand it. So let's get back to the beginning here and discuss this. Again, Resident Evil 7 producer says the Switch is a very unique hardware, he's really interested in it, but right now they have no plans to release Resident Evil 7 or the series on the Nintendo Switch. Randy Pitchford from Gearbox says, hey, the Switch looks awesome, I really like it and all this good stuff, but we're not going to force it on the Nintendo Switch, and Nintendo is probably not interested in forcing it either. When you say force, to me that means money. Give me money and we will force the game to be on your system. So he's basically asking for a handout right there. Obviously, if they were going to port the game to the Switch, they wouldn't be asking for money. They would just be putting it out there because they think they can make money on the Switch. That's the point of having developers put games on your system. They develop them, they port them on multiple platforms, and they hope they make a profit on the games they put on your system. If they're asking for money to put a game on your system, then there must be some kind of reasoning behind that. Either the development cost is too high, or maybe they don't see the audience being there to give them enough sales to make money on the product. Could be any one of those reasons, right? Then we have this strange message, at least in my opinion, from Psyonix Studios saying that they don't have enough information at this time. What information could one of the biggest indie studios be waiting for from Nintendo? Think about it. What do you think? Because by now, they should definitely have dev kits. They should definitely be able to port the game over. It's not a complicated game, so what on earth are they waiting for? What kind of information are they waiting for to make it happen? They're keeping their fingers crossed that it will. So maybe they're in discussion with Nintendo to get this game on the system. Maybe there's some kind of development hurdle. Maybe there's more cost to the game in porting it than what we know about. Maybe they're asking for some kind of funding. Who knows, right? They're an independent studio. Maybe they're even looking at additional features for the Switch version of this game. Maybe they're going to be adding Nintendo themed cars, you know, like Mario Kart, for example. That could be really cool, right? So it could be a positive to this, but the official statement is they don't have enough information at this time. So really that could mean anything, but it is kind of strange. And we've talked about third-party support here before, and of course, well, we've been hearing it from other companies taking the wait and see approach, and you know, basically watching to see how the Switch will sell with Nintendo's first-party games on it. We heard exactly the same thing with the Wii U back in 2013. We heard third parties say, hey, we're waiting for Nintendo to start releasing software so the system can take off, and then we'll start thinking about supporting it. We're kind of hearing the same thing here, but it's a little bit different. The system hasn't even launched yet, and we're hearing a lot of this stuff already. With the Wii U, the system launched, and we had a lot of third-party games on the system at launch, and then after that, we saw third parties back away, and they said, hey, let's see if the system will sell first before we start committing more games to it. And now we're hearing kind of something similar from Gearbox, at least, saying, hey, if Nintendo wants to force it to happen, they will. Basically, if they want to pay for it, they'll do it. But obviously, it's not happening with these companies right now. Capcom's giving us Ultra Street Fighter 2, which looks great. I love Street Fighter 2. It's one of my favorite fighting games of all time, if not my favorite of all time. But the Resident Evil series is huge, and it's been on every Nintendo platform since the Nintendo 64 with Resident Evil 2. So while Capcom didn't say it would not be coming to the Switch in the future, as of right now, they have no plans for it. So we can get all angry at these developers and say, you know, hey, you know, why aren't they supporting the system at launch? What's going on here? I can't believe them. You know, they're doing the wait and see approach again, and they're going to be, you know, maybe putting out some kind of weak port later, and then if it doesn't sell, they'll just have an excuse to say, oh, okay, we tried, and then we give up, right? We saw that happen with the Wii and the Wii U, actually. I think the Wii had that Dead Space game that was a first-person on-rails shooter, and of course it sold terrible, because basically that's what happens when you take a core gamer series like that and put it on rails and expect it to sell to casuals. It's not going to sell well. They did the same thing with the Wii U. They promised exclusives like Rayman Legends, and then they said, oh no, we'll just make it multi-platform now. And eventually Zombie U as well went multi-platform, and the original ports of FIFA and Madden from EA were watered down ports, and they weren't actually the best versions of the games. Even the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions were better than the Wii U versions of those games. So Nintendo fans have had an extremely difficult time with third-party developers, basically screwing them over, right? We've all seen it, we've all been through it. So it's definitely not surprising, guys, that third parties are taking this wait-and-see approach. However, if Nintendo really wants the Switch to be successful, they themselves would be putting their best foot forward to maybe putting some more effort into talking to these third parties to get more of them on board. Like, having Resident Evil 7 on the Switch at launch would be a huge boost to the system. There's no doubt about it. And I really think the system could run the game, honestly. I don't think, if power is an issue, I think the game could run at 720p and 30 frames per second since it's 1080p 60 frames per second on the other systems. I don't think it's an impossible reality for Resident Evil 7 to run on the Switch, and I think that'd be a really cool game to have at launch. So for Nintendo to be missing that game at launch, I think is just as much their fault as it is on Capcom. But if you want to blame it on Capcom saying, oh, we just don't want to do it because we want to wait and see first. But if Nintendo gave some incentive, for that game to be at launch, I think it would really help the sales of the Switch quite a bit. Because we as Nintendo fans, we're not asking for something crazy, really. We're asking for key third-party support. We're not asking for all of third-party support. Obviously, Nintendo hasn't had all of third-party support since, I guess, the beginnings of the GameCube when it had all third-party support. Well, the Wii had all third-party support as well. But Nintendo has always had that problem. So we're not asking for all of third parties to come on board, but having those key titles would really help the system. And Nintendo should have been talking to these companies to make sure the Switch has these games at launch. Rocket League, there should not be any question. That game should be at launch for the Nintendo Switch. There shouldn't be any question about it. It's one of the biggest selling indie games, and Nintendo would be extremely dumb not to have that game at launch. So for them to be not sure about it is strange at this point. I think it should be at launch. Nintendo really needs to put their foot forward and make that effort to get those games, the key games that they need for the Switch to be successful, especially in the all-important first year of the system. We know what happened to the Wii U in its first year. It tanked pretty quick. Came out of the gate strong with about 3 million systems sold in the first 2 months. Then it just completely fell off the track and was selling like 50,000 a month in 2013 until, basically it was limping, and finally they got Pikmin 3 out there, they got Super Mario 3D World out there, they got some key games out, but by that time, third parties had already left by the end of 2013. Now we have kind of the opposite effect where the third party games aren't quite there at launch. We have a ton of indie games at launch, but not the third party support, with them basically saying, wait and see. And of course, on the other side of the spectrum, you still got PS4 and Xbox One. They have all the third party support, and they have all the indies as well. You have Nintendo, they have the indies, and they have a couple third-party games at best right now, and all the great first-party games they have. So the problem here that I'm seeing is communication. I think Nintendo really needs to communicate with third parties a lot better than what they already have been. I know that EA came out and said Nintendo's been communicating a lot better. Well, I think they need to do a little bit better than that, because they're still not getting some key third-party games that they really honestly should be having, especially Rocket League. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? So before we as fans just criticize third parties alone and just say that, hey, they'll never support Nintendo, blah, 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 Nintendo needs to put their foot forward too and actually do some goodwill for these third parties to get these key games on board, and then the Switch could really take off immensely. And we still have hope there because Rocket League could still be coming in launch window, you never know. And we could get a Resident Evil game in the future, we never know, but for now we're not getting those games, and Rocket League has not been confirmed yet. So Nintendo still has work to do. They got some great games coming out this year that I'm really looking forward to. And of course the Switch pre-orders have sold out, the accessories have sold out, so the fans are there, they're ready to buy it. So we just need to have the games announced and ready to go for the Switch for future support. That's what I'm concerned about, is future support. Because right now we're not hearing anything from third parties that there's going to be any future support unless the Switch sells like crazy. And then you got the chicken and the egg syndrome, right? You can't have the chicken without the egg, right? You got to have both. So usually for a system to be successful, we're talking about in normal circumstances, for a console to sell well, it needs to have hardware that could run the latest games and needs to have a variety of games for it to be successful. And if too many third parties stand back and say, hey, we're not going to support it until Nintendo sells their own system, they're basically saying, hey, we're not going to give you the games that you desperately want until later unless you sell the system. And then what ends up happening, like we saw with the Wii U, you don't have the games, the sales are not there either. So to have the sales, you need to have the games. Nintendo is doing it in the first year all by themselves, basically with indies a lot. They pretty much have a new release every month from when the Switch launches in March to the end of the year. So that's good. The only concern is that it segregates the Switch to Nintendo fans and certain types of software that just appeal to them. Is that going to be enough? Well, I really hope so, honestly, but people generally buy products that gives them a variety of things to choose from. So Nintendo, you need to get on the phone and get a hold of these companies, put some money out there if you need to, get more games on your system, get them announced to get us even more excited for your platform. And I really hope they're doing that right now. Alright guys, so let me know what you think in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Take care.